At the end of April 2015, many of us were surprised to hear news of a new Dragon Ball series. This wasn't a cheap redraw like Dragon Ball Kai. Instead, it would feature totally new stories from Akira Toriyama made specifically for this new series. But where did it go all wrong? Was Dragon Ball Super everything that longtime fans were expecting? Or was it a lazy excuse of a series which served to play on the nostalgia of old fans? Did Dragon Ball Super really do anything other than deliver pure fan service with its transformations, confusing old fans with retcons, ruining power scaling, and butchering the characterization and personalities of some of our most beloved characters? I want to talk specifically about the problems that I have with Dragon Ball Super. Now that the hype train for the series has sufficiently died down, we can look back at what it did right and where I think it went totally wrong. Dragon Ball Super has a handful of issues which really made it difficult for me to tune into each week, and the only reason that I continued to watch the show until its conclusion was out of just pure love for the franchise and nostalgia. Dragon Ball Super is not bad as much as it is disappointing. As a fan who waited for a new series ever since watching the final episode of GT, I found it difficult to accept what was happening to my favourite franchise. I'm making this video purely due to the need to highlight where Super has flaws, in an attempt to show that we deserve better than what we got. Just to make it clear, this is my opinion on Dragon Ball Super, based on speculation from the information that we have and the anime series that we received. So here is my take on the Dragon Ball Super problem, along with my speculation as to why we haven't had a continuation announced as of January 2020. Before getting to the problems, let's first see what Dragon Ball Super does right. The strengths of Dragon Ball Super arise from the moments of downtime that we get in between arcs and fights. The Dragon Ball style slice of life episodes totally reminded me of some of my favourite Dragon Ball Z filler episodes, like Krillin finding Marin's Pearl or Goku and Piccolo's driving school episode. The majority of fans, I presume, enjoyed seeing the day-to-day lives of the Dragon Ball cast, seeing Vegeta being a caring husband and father, or Yamcha having a complete episode dedicated to him as we see the cast play baseball. I definitely enjoyed episodes like this, being able to see more comedic moments, as well as seeing more of the characters of Beerus and Whis, who are some of my favourite newer Dragon Ball characters. Also, I loved the beginning of the Goku Black arc until the back and forth time travel got complicated, and the whole arsepull ending ruined what could have been a great arc. Lastly, Android 17's reintroduction is the greatest gift Super has given to us fans. Aside from this, I don't think there is anything significant to really praise about Dragon Ball Super as a series. The problems with Super arise, well, from the very beginning of the series. The first two arcs of Super are retellings of the movies Battle of Gods and Resurrection F. Aside from the fact that we have seen this material adapted much better in their movie counterparts, nothing new is really added to these stories in their Super anime versions. They have terrible pacing and needless padding, and feature embarrassing animation. The Beerus arc is covered from episodes 1 to 14, and the Resurrection F arc is adapted in episodes 15 to 27, so we have 27 episodes of recapping before we reach any new material. As standalone movies, I love Battle of Gods and Resurrection F, particularly how Battle of Gods captures Toriyama's comedy with a nice blend of action. It was refreshing to see when the movies first came out. These arcs were adapted purely due to Toei Animation not having enough material to create a new series from the get-go. Essentially, they needed 6 months of recapping so that Toriyama could write new scripts and for them to organize their production team for the series. It's well known that Super had very little planning and pre-production, and this is evident in the sloppy animation that is featured. I remember the backlash after Super Episode 5 airing. A lot of people, including Toriyama, were not happy with the Dragon Ball Super anime. The series author Akira Toriyama stated that he initially became re-involved with the Dragon Ball franchise due to his dissatisfaction with the live-action movie Dragon Ball Evolution. This is what pushed him to begin writing scripts for Battle of Gods and Resurrection F. Despite his efforts, Toriyama continues to say that now he finds himself complaining about the quality of the Dragon Ball Super anime, to say that the creator of the series has issues with it, and to say it publicly, which isn't the custom in Japanese culture, is pretty telling. The Super anime really was rushed for release and had little to no quality control over the episodes they were creating to air on TV. One of the animators who worked on the show even stated that the team working on the show are beyond help. The animation director is snowed under with work, and the scheduling is totally disorganized. The series wasn't off to a good start from the get-go. It's no wonder it continued to have problems throughout its run. Along with terrible animation, Dragon Ball Super had inconsistent and lazy writing, which often ruined established established power scaling, character portrayals, and outright retconning established lore from the original manga and its anime adaptations. Super ruined power scaling in these examples, seeing how Super Saiyan God was established in the first two arcs to increase the base strength of Goku and Vegeta after attaining the form. However, during the Universe 6 tournament, base Goku and Vegeta are written to be weak so that the Super Saiyan forms are not rendered useless. Throughout the Goku Black arc, Future Trunks has ridiculous power scaling. There are instances when Super Saiyan Trunks holds his own against Super Saiyan Rose, a form which is stronger or if not stronger than Super Saiyan Blue, not to mention how Future Trunks has a total arsepull moment when he kills Merge Zamasu with a form that the anime doesn't even name or is ever seen again. There are many more power scaling issues. I believe it stems from the writers being purely lazy, so instead of giving the characters tactics in battle, it is just a matter of tweaking the scaling to balance their fights. Now, if we had weaker characters who had the opportunity to face stronger opponents with correct power scaling, then we would have tense battles with actual stakes that will help to make you feel invested in the series. Now, if you recall, in Dragon Ball Z, Krillin and Gohan on Planet Namek were using tactics throughout their battles, and even suffered consequences for getting in over their heads during their fights with the Ginyu Force. I really missed this in Dragon Ball Super, and believe the lazy writing and no care for consistency is to blame. I think they tried to remedy the power scaling issue in the Tournament of Power arc, but that was easily due to the rules of the tournament, which forced the stronger characters to lower their strength or change the way they are fighting so as to not accidentally kill their opponent. I miss weaker characters outsmarting the stronger opponents while their lives are on the line. This was the main appeal of early Dragon Ball to me before it became the Super Saiyan show. Let's move on to how Super handles characters. The best example to demonstrate this problem is the character of Goku. You'd think writing a character as iconic and simple as Goku would be easy, right? The issue is that Super portrays Goku as a one-dimensional idiot, who is written to be dumber than what he was in Dragon Ball Z. Goku's character by nature is innocent and childish. He has moments of cluelessness in Dragon Ball Z, but they never overstay their welcome. However, in Dragon Ball Super, they ruin the maturity of Goku's character. Goku by the Cell arc showed a fraction of his naivety and his gullible nature. Instead, we see a character who has gained a lot of wisdom and experience, and serves as a guiding force for the younger characters like Gohan, Goten, and Trunks. This doesn't mean that Goku isn't silly or playful. In the manga, Goku is a dependable warrior who looks like he knows what he is doing. By the end of Dragon Ball Z, he not only shares his wisdom with his family, but with Oob by choosing to help him to control his inner power. Goku is thought to be a selfish character who doesn't value his family, but moments like Goku training with Gohan during the Cell arc or sacrificing himself during the Cell games, and his relationship with Pan and his family at the end of Dragon Ball Z refute these notions. I'm not saying Goku is a perfect character, it's just that his flaws were more balanced in the previous installments of the series. Toriyama even says that there is poison in his character, but Super just plays on the stupidity of Goku by dumbing his character down and rewriting him into a naive, immature version of himself who at first glance doesn't appear to have a finely honed ability in martial arts. Super really exaggerates Goku's innocence and stupidity. The only time he isn't being a simpleton is in battles, whereas previously Goku's maturity was always reassuring, particularly in the Cell and Buu arc. I remember watching these arcs as a kid and thinking, despite Cell and Buu being incredibly strong, my confidence in Goku always reassured me that he seemed like he had something up his sleeve. Dragon Ball Super's portrayal of Goku doesn't ignite the same level of confidence that I had before. Again, it is another example of lazy writing, reducing characters down to one-dimensional traits, leaving them feeling bland and uninteresting. Like Goku is stupid and only likes fighting strong opponents, or how Vegeta is prideful and arrogant and constantly training so that he isn't number 2 to Goku. And characters like Piccolo, Tien, and Krillin in Super, they are useless background padding with little of their appeal left from their initial introductions. Super could have written in elements to make these characters more relevant, but again, lazy writing doesn't have time to flesh out the main characters, let alone side characters. Gohan's character was probably done the most justice in Super, well because it doesn't require much thinking to write a character who has no interest in fighting, in a show about fighting. Gohan always hated fighting, this is well established in Dragon Ball Z, but now that he has a family and is a scholar, which was his life ambition, what reason would he have to fight in Super? Ultimately, Gohan only battles when the fate of the universe is at stake. This is a nice way to reintroduce a retired character. Gohan even realizes his need to train, and that neglecting his talent for fighting may not be the wisest decision after all, if a time would come where he needs to protect his family and is unable to due to not having trained enough. Gohan is probably the only character with any growth in Dragon Ball Super, despite him having very little screen time. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Goten and Kid Trunks are the biggest disappointments in Super, previously having a lot of screen time in the Buu arc. In Super, they are reduced to little kids who will just get in the way. They are never involved in the main cast due to them being being children. However, in the boot arc, the fate of the world was entrusted to them by Goku through pushing them to learn the fusion technique to avenge the supposed death of Gohan and the actual death of Vegeta so that they could defeat Buu. Neither of the characters have a change in character design, especially if you compare how often Gohan's appearance was changing as he was growing up. Goten and Trunks, on the other hand, still look like their 7 and 8-year-old selves in Super, despite them being on the verge of becoming teenagers in this series. I tolerated Super while it was airing, but now that it ended, I feel strongly about my unfavourable opinion for this series. At least with GT, I have nostalgia, its great musical score, and a superb final episode, which are its redeeming qualities. When comparing it to Super, at least GT was consistent with its boring plot. It didn't retcon as much as Super while introducing new concepts, and kept the characters feeling like more than just one-dimensional NPCs. Super's final arc is undeniably better than GT, but it's a shame that we have to invest so much time to get to that point. The material Toei is working with is not the issue. This is evident with Toyotaro's manga adaptation, which despite having its own issues, I'd much rather prefer over the Super anime. To understand how flawed Super was, just compare its first 2 arcs to their movie counterparts. When it comes down to it, Super was rushed from the beginning, it had a disorganized production, and it suffered from lazy writing. I'm genuinely not hating on the series for the sake of it. I just want fans to question what's handed to them and ask for better, because frankly we deserve better than what Toei gave us. If Toriyama isn't pleased with Toei's handling of Dragon Ball Super, then why should we settle for it? So what if Super returned with a continuation? Can we really get an animated series which ignites the fandom with interest like the recent Broly movie did? There is a lot of demand. This is apparent from how well Broly performed in the box office, making it the highest grossing Dragon Ball movie to date. The issue with a continuation to Super is how it will be handled by Toei Animation. The Broly movie featured incredible art and animation, and refreshing character designs by Shintani. The Shintani designs would have to be in the Super sequel, along with better writing. We recently learnt via Geekdom 101 that Toriyama hasn't drafted any further scripts since the Broly movie. The current arc in the Super manga, the Galactic Prisoner arc, is written by Toyotaro, with Toriyama supervising it. I can only speculate if it's Toriyama taking his time, being complacent, or simply that he is disappointed by Toei's handling of his work. I'm not sure when Toriyama will retire, but there will eventually come a time when Dragon Ball will be handled without his supervision. I guess we are even seeing glimpses of this happening now with the Superheroes anime and how abysmal it is. I assume the folks in the Dragon Ball room along with Toyotaro will continue Toriyama's work, and we may see Super return one day, but for now the reason that it hasn't returned is due to Toriyama not drafting any further scripts for Toei to adapt. In my opinion, a successful continuation would have to avoid a lot of the problems that Super had. There would need to be proper planning and pre-production, a story which is written by Toriyama which is adapted faithfully through proper writing and character development. There would need to be consistencies and a respect for the established lore of the series. If these conditions cannot be met, then frankly we are probably better off without a continuation. The Dragon Ball franchise is loved by many people across the globe, and with its recent resurgence of popularity, it doesn't look like it's going anywhere anytime soon. We don't have any news of an anime or a movie to look forward to, but Toyotaro has been continuing his Super manga with the Galactic Prisoner arc, which has renewed the interest of many fans, particularly how the antagonist Moro is able to challenge Goku and Vegeta by absorbing their Genki or life force. It was a pleasant surprise to see a villain challenging Goku and Vegeta by not just using brute strength or power-ups. Moro is an interesting villain, and the challenge he poses to the cast of Dragon Ball is a much needed one, as the characters have reached a level of power which is godlike. To remain interesting, the series will have to utilize different storytelling mechanics so that the same formula of power-ups and strength is not continued to be beaten to death. Also, through introducing consequences within the stories will help to deliver better story arcs. As of present, the Dragon Balls can be used to undo any major change or death within the series. Previously, the Earth's Dragon Balls had the limitation of reviving a person only once. This made a death feel more impactful, but with the Namekian Dragon Balls, a person can be revived as many times by Porunga, making a death feel like it has no impact or meaning, simply because they can be revived with the Dragon Balls. Looking back at Dragon Ball Super, it didn't really have a plot, it's just about battling stronger opponents repeatedly. Essentially, the series served to ignite the nostalgia of old fans with fan service, and keep the story simple enough for children to follow along, ensuring Dragon Ball remains relevant for another generation. The only arc which has any real stakes in my opinion was the Goku Black arc, and it's a shame how it ended. In regards to the Tournament of Power, it was pretty obvious that Zeno wouldn't keep the universes that were eliminated erased. Sure as anything, they were all restored by the end of the tournament, by Android 17's wish to Super Shenron. I had always looked forward to a continuation to Dragon Ball. It was the first time I was experiencing new Dragon Ball content on a weekly basis, as it was being aired in Japan. To look back on what we got feels disappointing and lackluster now. At the end of the day, Dragon Ball is a kid show. Super aired at 9 AM on a Sunday, targeted towards children, whereas back in the 90s, Dragon Ball Z aired on Wednesdays at 7 PM, during a prime time slot which was catered towards all ages. Television standards have changed, so violence and gore isn't present like before, as well as Super not being based off of a manga which featured interesting storytelling, which made you want to catch the next chapter. Super pales in comparison to the original manga or the prior anime series due to being a quick cash grab, which backpedaled on the characterization and development of characters and featured lazy animation that even Toriyama was displeased with. I would only want Super 2 if it would be an improvement on Super, otherwise I'm not as passionate about having a continuation if it will ruin the characters and story that I grew to love in my childhood. Despite all of this, Bandai, Toei and Fuji TV made hefty profits from the Dragon Ball Super anime and its merchandise. Considering how they haven't capitalized off of the success of the Broly movie by announcing another movie or a series, it may be a sign that Toriyama may not want to have an animated series. Instead, he may prefer if his scripts were adapted into a feature-length movie which releases every 2 years. The movies have a cohesive narrative and it will be accompanied by better art and animation, and personally I would prefer if Dragon Ball would go the movie route and focus on producing high quality pieces of media, as I have no issue with Battle of Gods, Resurrection F or Super Broly. I loved these 3 movies and would love to see more done with Shintani's new designs. This is just my personal take on Dragon Ball Super and what I as a longtime fan would want from the franchise going forward. Do you agree or disagree with my viewpoints? Let me know by leaving your thoughts in the comments.